We'll respect the time of those who were prompt. And hopefully others will be joining us shortly, but we can move on to get started with the housekeeping. I want to welcome everybody. I'm Jane Curtis, the Managing Director of FCWC, and we are really excited to host today's seminar on streetscaping. So first, some Zoom reminders for the meeting. FCWC Board Member Carol Griffiths and FCWC Administrative Manager Kendra Galetta will be assisting with the Zoom logistics during the meeting, and Kendra can help you if you're experiencing any technical difficulties. We ask you to please put yourselves, your audio on mute during the presentations to minimize background noise. We plan to have a Q&A discussion following the presentations, so please hold your questions until then or put them in the chat. And please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Finally, a reminder that we are recording the meeting for later viewing. So again, FCWC is excited to host today's seminar on streetscaping. 2024 was one of the hottest years on records, with periods of extreme heat that have serious negative effects on our health and our quality of life. Our towns and cities weren't designed for these new environmental conditions. Streetscapes, as we will hear, are one solution to mitigate the negative effects of extreme heat. We hope that you will leave with a greater understanding of these issues and will be inspired to bring streetscaping to your community, to lead Westchester by participating in a demonstration project. We have 6 expert speakers to inform and guide us during today's session. You will find their impressive bios in your program. So first, we will learn about extreme heat and how it affects us from environmental health scientist and FCWC board member, Dr. Anjali Sauthoff. Anjali, the mic is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Is that clear for everybody? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jane, and welcome everybody. It's wonderful to be able to mark the first full day of spring by coming together to focus on nature and its impacts on communities. Local awareness, partnership, and action are imperative to developing long-lasting solutions that protect communities against climate impacts like extreme heat events, intense storms, and flooding. And FCWC is proud to help support that awareness, partnership, and action building with workshops like this that are allowing for us to connect the dots between knowledge, opportunities, and support, and also to learn from each other. So thank you for taking part because you all help by showing up and participating in this especially challenging time. I'm going to begin today by providing a brief overview of the impacts of extreme heat on health for context on why it's important to find ways to mitigate extreme heat, particularly in hotspots like urban areas. So, there are many There are many health and safety concerns that are related to climate conditions. The US GCRP, or the Global Change Research Program, has grouped these concerns into temperature-related death and illness, both heat and cold, severe weather events such as large storms and floods, air quality, including air pollution, allergens, and wildfire smoke, vector-borne diseases, water-related illnesses, food safety, nutrition, and distribution, as well as mental health and well-being, which can be affected by temperature disasters and even the threat of climate change, which can contribute to climate anxiety. So this figure illustrates the general mechanism through which climate hazards, here we go, the climate drivers, influence health outcomes. So climate hazards like increased temperatures and extreme weather expose people to extreme heat, poor air, food or water quality, and displacement. These exposures can lead to short or long-term health consequences. And it's important to understand that this pathway in the middle is strongly influenced by the environmental, institutional, social, and behavioral contexts in which people live, work, and play. So these contexts are often referred to as the social and environmental determinants of health. And these factors can be protective, or they can further amplify threats of climate hazards. And that's why climate change is often referred to as a threat multiplier, creating interacting hazards and risks. Now, of all of these climate hazards in the United States, extreme heat is already the #1 cause of weather-related deaths, more than tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, and cold weather combined. And in the US, the average number of heat waves per year, the average length of heat waves, the length of the heat wave season, and the average temperature above local threshold during heat waves have all increased in the past few decades. The Northeast is the fastest warming region in the contiguous United States, and it's heating up at a rate 50% faster than the global average. In New York, what is considered extreme heat varies from one part of the state to another. Historically, days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit occurred somewhat regularly in New York City, but were relatively uncommon in northern parts of the state. But in the future, days above 90 degrees are projected to become more common across all regions of New York. You can see this reflected in this graph where the gray bars represent the 1981 to 2010 average temperatures, orange the 2050s, and maroon the projected temperatures in the 2080s. So what are the implications for health? Extreme heat can directly impact people through heat-related illness such as dehydration, heat cramps, and heat stroke, accelerate death in people who have already experienced chronic diseases like cardiovascular, respiratory, or kidney disease. And it can even affect people on certain medications. Extreme heat can also affect people indirectly through disruption in medical services and access to healthcare, through electricity disruption, and even increased ambulance call volume leading to slower response times. So according to the CDC in 2023, extreme heat sent nearly 120,000 people in the United States to emergency rooms. And we recently saw an example in the Pacific Northwest, which experienced a heat dome, which is when the atmosphere traps hot ocean air, in the summer of 2021, when temperatures peaked at 116 degrees Fahrenheit and resulted in a 69-fold increase in emergency department visits in Washington state for heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and exacerbation of chronic medical conditions. There was even a case of third-degree burns from walking on hot asphalt. And since the hottest days in the Northeast are often associated with high concentrations of ground-level ozone and other pollutants, the combination of heat stress and poor air quality can pose a major health risk to high-risk groups. So what can we do? This is a little bit busy, but I'm going to have you focus on the blue box in the middle. Thinking systemically and understanding the relationships between people and place is imperative to mitigating the health impacts associated with extreme heat. So during an extreme heat event, though everybody is exposed, some people face higher risks than others because of differences in vulnerability. Vulnerability is a function of exposure, which can be thought of as contact with a hazard, sensitivity to a hazard to which one is exposed, and adaptive capacity. which has to do with having the ability and the resources to respond and adjust to hazards. Now, external drivers, you can see on the left in the green, such as urban development and the urban heat island effect, can further exacerbate vulnerability. But negative health outcomes can also be reduced through behavioral change and hazard mitigation actions like early warning systems, which are depicted on the right. So these elements of vulnerability vary across both individuals as well as populations and need to be assessed at the local level. Now, I mentioned the urban heat island effect. Urban areas have densely developed buildings, lots of pavement, dark roofs, and other heat sinks that absorb heat on hot days, which result in average temperatures that can be more than 10 degrees higher than surrounding communities. The urban heat island effect has tripled the number of individuals worldwide exposed to extreme heat as a result of living in denser populations with less access to mitigating factors such as urban vegetation, the focus of our workshop today. We can see here that even nighttime temperatures remain higher in urban areas, which is particularly dangerous to health because it doesn't allow the body time to recover from a hot day. Now, this map focuses on Westchester County, but is part of a larger map of New York State that was developed by the New York State Department of Health, the Heat Vulnerability Index, which identified areas across the state that have populations that are at a higher risk of poor health outcomes during extreme heat events. And you can see that the areas of highest concern are many of our urban areas that are densely populated, yet not as protected. So I'm going to pass on the talking stick, the virtual talking stick, over to Leo now, so that he can tell you how New York State is addressing some of these issues.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I believe the slides are over with you all, or should I bring them up?
You go ahead and bring them up, Leo.
Come again?
You go ahead and bring them up if you can.
Okay, I just sent the request. Okay, there we go. And how does this look?
It's good.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Leo Bachinger. I'm with the Office of Climate Change at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And I really appreciate the time to talk briefly about the Extreme Heat Action Plan that the state released in June of last year, and we are currently working on implementing. I'll keep this really poignant and focused and brief, but I do want to emphasize that we're always available to come to workshops like this to do deeper dives, talk more about the plan, hear more about what's going on in communities. So I really appreciate this opportunity to give you this broad level overview. And I think really the bottom line of this plan and why I'm here is that to convey that one, the state is really focused on extreme heat and making addressing it a priority, but also especially focused on thinking about a built environment and how people live in that built environment as a key driver within heat exposure and advancing the solutions. So really briefly, the Extreme Heat Action Plan is designed to or was developed pursuant to a State of the State directive by Governor Hochul in 2022 to address extreme heat impacts in disadvantaged communities, areas of employment, and recreational zones. And that really goes to the heart that one, extreme heat is becoming more common and is a public health emergency right now, is becoming more widespread, frequent, intense, longer as climate change progresses, with significant shifts in, say, days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But importantly, that as extreme heat is impacting different people, different communities, and different places dramatically different. And Anjali pointed to that very sophisticatedly already. So I won't dive into that. However, I want to underscore that to address extreme heat, it doesn't only take state action, but collaborative action between local communities, community members, and the state and other partners. And as part of that, it's really important to help communities, but also for the state to understand and characterize extreme heat so we can plan for it and address it. A good way to start that is with the New York State Climate Impacts Assessment, which gives you information about climate change and how it is impacting the state, its different economic sectors, regions, communities, but also offers case studies for how communities experience impacts of climate change and find solutions. More specifically for extreme heat, there's a range of resources already available. You heard about the heat vulnerability index that Department of Health has. In addition, we released, along with the extreme heat action plan, a companion report that summarizes the impacts of extreme heat as we are observing them in New York State and expecting them with climate change. Department of Health has also heat surveillance reports that they update weekly throughout the summer and daily during extreme heat events that gives you information about emergency department visits on a regional and local level to really help communities understand where impacts are occurring during events on the health level. And finally, we have the New York State Disadvantaged Communities criteria as another way on looking at community vulnerability on the intersection of historic disinvestment, environmental and health burdens, and climate burdens and the impacts and how they inequitably address and impact our communities. And all that drives our understanding of extreme heat, because we know that extreme heat, as so many climate impacts, unfold along the margins of society and impact the most vulnerable communities first and most severely. How a built environment is driving extreme heat has a big part in that. Past environmental burden, land cover, prevalence of concrete that traps heat. All of this is unequally distributed across our communities, especially in urban, suburban, and other developed areas. And often low-income communities and communities of colors are living in those concentrations of heat, as well as in communities that at the same time experience other health, economic, and pollution burdens. To help understand that, DEC is mapping exposure of extreme heat currently on the statewide scale. So this will be available for the entirety of the state by 2026 to understand heat exposure. How hot does it get? Where does it get more hot? How long and in what intensity? And both looking at past data as well as future data using climate change projections. And I can dive into this in Q&A or in follow-up conversations more. But this is a forthcoming tool that we really seek to help communities understand where is heat based on how the built environment drives and exacerbates that heat. And so that's really going at the heart of the streetscapes problem. All right. This was really fast and a lot of resources. I'll put a link into the chat that brings you to a website that has much more information on this. I'll close up by briefly looking at the Extreme Heat Action Plan itself to give you an understanding of what the state is doing. This is a plan that includes 49 specific actions that the state has articulated that it intends to undertake. Those actions are associated with short and mid-range goals, as well as what agency is going to take the lead on those actions and which agencies are supporting those actions. There's a wide range of actions in there across what we call 4 action tracks. This is to support planning and make more resources available for communities to plan for extreme heat, both for emergencies as well as in long-term adaptation. This is to make resources available for workers' protection or to give access to communities to cooling, not only in cooling centers, but especially also in natural spaces. Make new swimming opportunities available, connect communities without green spaces to more green spaces. And then very important for this conversation here, a lot of actions that really get at the heart of the built environment, from model zoning overlays and technical support for land use planning to bringing online guidance and resources for how we can think about streetscapes and how nature-based solutions can be embedded in our streetscapes to make them cooler and to enhance resources for implementing those solutions in the most disadvantaged, vulnerable, and impact affected communities and exposed communities. And critically, nature-based solutions, green infrastructure, trees, parks is at the heart of a lot of those solutions. And this fourth track here really aims at mainstreaming and prioritizing those solutions across the other ones to really like mainstream and integrate that. And this includes not only bringing resources online to fund and support implementation, but also to support training of the people, the workers, the communities that not only plan and plant, but also maintain our green infrastructure solutions. That's really high level. I will point later on in the later part of this discussion to some resources that are available for communities already to fund this kind of solutions. But this is really just a little taster of this extreme heat action plan and this work that is going on. We will develop an update on this work and the progress over the last a little less than a year, considering when the plan was first released, later before the summer or by the summer. So stay tuned for that, but I'm always happy to answer questions or dive into this more as we progress. And with that, I'm handing it back. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leo. So now that we've heard about how extreme heat is affecting us and what the state's recognition of the challenge, we're going to pause for a brief poll. So please answer the questions and submit. We'll leave it open for a minute or so. So answers are coming in. "21 responses so far out of 37 on the call. We've got 30 out of the 38 now. Anybody else who wants to respond, please do so in the next few seconds. And then we'll close the poll and look at the results. Okay, Carol, I think we can close the poll. And here are our results. How does extreme heat impact you? Top answer, I spend less time outside. Well, that's telling. And What do you think we can do to mitigate, create more shaded areas, more pocket parks, provide better understanding, create community opportunities to co-develop? Okay. Thank you. So now we're going to hear about streetscaping itself, what it is and how to do it effectively. From George Profous, who served for over a decade as our DEC Region 3 urban forester. George, the mic is yours.
Okay, yeah, okay. Do you have the slides? If you may.
Yes.
In my talk is a summary of ideas. There are handouts for details on all of this, or please call us with questions and we'll get back to you, or we'll get you in touch with someone who can answer your questions. Handouts for this presentation are available online through the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. Okay, streetscapes and green infrastructure are a significant part of the New York State Extreme Heat Action Plan, as Leo mentioned. Hopefully my presentation will help provide ideas and link the action plan to your community. We'll start by the three main things in the action plan: identifying key locations, setting up demonstration projects, and getting the staff for the long term. So those three things are the crux of the whole issue. My talk will be a lot more about the details, but I'm going to start in general. So I'm going to go from the larger impact to the local impact. Okay, next. Okay, the Earth receives energy from the sun. It's either reflected by the clouds or the ground, absorbed, and or radiated. But the key note to remember is that 60% of the incoming energy that reaches the Earth's surface evaporates and condenses water. So, and trees are an important part of this. Next. Okay. Cities can generate air and surface temperatures from 3 degrees Fahrenheit all the way to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than vegetated areas. They absorb more heat, reflect less heat, make more heat, and have less water to evaporate and condense, which basically balances the heat. So I'm not going to repeat what's on the slides for the most part. So next. Okay. Cities are like cement deserts. They concentrate heat with very little water or too much water at once. The heat quickly depletes the water, causing drought and more heat. So there's a lot of similarities between deserts and cities. Next. When we think of trees and plants, we think of photosynthesis. But photosynthesis uses only about 1% of the energy that reaches the Earth's surface. Over 60% of the energy evaporates and transpires water. Transpires is like moves water. And trees are a major impact in this. They're also affected by how much carbon dioxide is in the air, drought conditions, and heat. All those three things can reduce how well they operate. So some of the things we're talking about, some of the designs need to address those extremes. Okay, next. Okay. This water provides local, regional, and global water balance, reducing extremes. So water is very important. Large increases in urban land affect the water balance. Now about half the people on Earth live in urban areas. Before the end of the century, 80% of the people are predicted to be living in urban areas, and urban areas are expanding twice as fast as the population. Next. Okay, the atmosphere is a conveyor belt, basically moving water. The movement of water through trees into the atmosphere is not water lost. It's water redistributed. And urban areas increase the amount of heat, as we've seen. So they can change this cycle, making heat more intense locally and downwind, with consequences like more or less rain in one place. In other words, they can disrupt the balance. Okay. Next. Okay. As we sit here on a park bench, each one of us is warming the air around us by 50 watts per square meter. And each one of us is about a little less than 2 meters on average. So that comes out to about 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a tree with a 26-foot leaf canopy.
You're not on the phone. Okay. I can hear you.
All right. Okay. Can reduce the energy reaching the ground by 12% through evapotranspiration, which means the movement of water. Even more by reducing reflected and radiated heat, which is basically shading. A tree is a river to the sky. Next. Okay. If we were standing on this sidewalk, we would be heated, instead of heating the area around us, by more than 20 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what we call extreme heat. And the measurement of that is human thermal comfort, which basically takes into account that extreme reflection and radiation from everything around us that heats us up. Next. Okay. Okay, now for some solutions. Although simple, the 3 rule provides a guide for us. Okay, next. Okay, starting with 3 trees visible from your window. Notice the appearance of these 2 streets within 1 block of each other. This is up in Albany. Well-kept and designed public spaces encourage public use, improve safety, health, neighborhood pride, and many other things, and reduce heat. Okay. And also health. Okay. This 30% canopy cover is the starting basis for reducing extreme heat. But less canopy cover is also good. Anything that can be done helps. This is a striking example of underused potential cooling space. It's a distribution center, but it's near Newburgh. Planting would reduce overall temperatures by 2 to 5 degrees if it was in the city itself, and locally as much as 20 degrees or more. Next. The 3rd level is some sort of park, some sort of space, some open space accessible with green infrastructure within 300 meters. Trees and accessible public space should be considered in master planning and zoning and included in future public and private development. This is a park in New York City, but the point is that saving space is important. It's important whether it's in downtown New York or whether it's in any other neighborhood. Next. Okay. Another parklet example from a less dense setting Something as simple as using leaf area index of the trees chosen for shade is important. Okay, what's leaf area index is how much shade does the tree provide? How much sunlight does it filter? How much heat does it keep off the sidewalks? How much water does it put into the atmosphere? Here you see honey locusts, which have very fine leaves. So they have a much smaller leaf area index than lindens, let's say, that have big leaves and a much thicker canopy. So experts, anyone you hire or anyone that's working with trees needs to keep these things in their minds and in the designs. Next. Okay, is this an appropriate town center? I'm not going to tell you where this is, but what are the key places for future public green space? A lot of it needs to be done ahead of time and considered as part of zoning and master planning. Next. Okay. Where are the unused opportunities? This is underused space in a parking lot. It won't take any stormwater. No carbon sequestration, there's one poor tree there, or shade, which would reduce pollution from car vehicles and heat in car vehicles. And so pollution reduction. And so keep these things in mind. Next. Okay. Who will maintain the rain gardens or the stormwater plantings over time? 2 years after planting, the stormwater is bypassing this planting because water can't run uphill, and it needs to be maintained. Try to delay planting bushes and understory for at least 2 growing seasons. Allow the trees to establish. Here, the trees almost died because we had a drought for 2 years and one severe one, and because the water wasn't getting to the trees. Trees in plantings absorb 70% of the storm water compared to grass and bushes with much less maintenance. So next.
Can you say that statistic one more time, George, please?
Okay. Trees and plantings absorb 70% on average of the storm water absorbed in green infrastructure, compared to grass and bushes. They're also much easier to maintain. Bushes and grasses require a lot of maintenance, cleanup, volunteering for garbage removal, everything like that. Okay, next. Again, the largest growing space possible is what we're looking for. Growing space is the #1 predictor of a planting success. So whatever time or energy you put into making a larger growing space is the major thing to do. It's the most important thing to do. We need trees to survive at least 30 years to reach their full benefits. And you won't get that without larger growing space. So in the previous example, the sidewalk was very wide and could have been designed differently and still had plenty of space for people to be able to move around. In this picture, it just shows how extra space can be used for a little park-like setting, or when available, it should be used. And next. Okay. Oh, and before I forget, insist on proper planting. And if you can't get proper planting guarantees, at least strong warranties for replacement of after the first growing season if the tree dies. Okay, good planting includes a good crown, right depth, good roots, the right species, and a good planting pit. among others. All this is available in the handouts. Okay. Next. Oh, not yet. Can we go back? Sorry. Thank you. How far apart should trees be planted? Okay, that discussion is again in the attached handouts that we have. On the left here, you see a good planting because mature canopies should be 5 to 10 feet apart when the tree is mature. Distance is not between the tree trunks, it's between the tree canopy, the leaves. So on the left side is a good planting, and on the right side, hey, it's still good to have the trees. It helps, but it's not so good. Leaving the distance between the trees allows air to move, warm air to move through the openings at night to cool down. So the trees will cool down during the day, then the air movement is improved at night. That varies depending upon the size of the trees and many other things. Okay, next. The parks act as a funnel for cooler air. Even small parks will do this. Clustering trees interspersed with open spaces and unobstructed park perimeters. They need to be kept open. They shouldn't be filled with bushes and other things that will stop the flow of cold air out of the park into the surrounding neighborhoods at night. Again, next. Okay, and the streetscapes target east-west streets. These are the hottest locations in our climate. And they harness the prevailing winds, which are from west to east. Okay, next. Target the north side of streets. This is the area of most direct sunlight and most extreme heating. Okay, next. Okay, and to summarize, identify high priority areas, preferably part of a larger city plan, master plan, zoning ordinances. So if you're a CAC or a tree commission, get it, get involved with that, help with it. Identify high visibility demonstration projects, both large and small. Doesn't have to be a big area, it can be a smaller area to improve public access. And you'll see many of the examples from the other speakers that will follow me. And make sure you have the expertise to create these spaces and to maintain these spaces. And the details are all in the handouts again. And a monitoring component is always good to work with a local high school or middle school to monitor before planting and after planting. And the after planting can take a good 4 or 5 years, unless you should start with, it's best left, you should start with larger trees, but smaller trees survive better. So there is a discussion that needs to be kept in mind. But working with local schools will help the monitoring component, and we need to transfer hundreds of research papers that are out there from just modeling the changes to monitoring the changes in our cities and towns. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and we're always available to answer questions.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much. So now that we have had a really good overview of treescaping, we need to consider that every community is different. Westchester County's landscape architect, Suzette Lopane, will join us now to talk about design considerations for streetscaping and examples from her work with Westchester municipalities. Suzette, the mic is yours.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen and can hear me well. And yes, I do want to talk about some of my own work here in Westchester County. I'm a landscape architect. I've practiced here for 28 years. And I love my job. I love what I do, and I love to plant street trees. So here, I just want to show you a picture of kind of my vision of what, as starting out, I thought we should have in our urban landscape. You know, these wonderful American elms arching over the road, you know, just a place of joy, right? For those of us who love trees. And, you know, as I continued in my career, I realized that, you know, I wasn't dealing with this street here in this upper picture. You can see the little dots. Well, those are those beautiful elms. And behind those elms are large swaths of grass area. And guess what? That's where the tree's roots are. So what I was dealing with was more of this, you know, wide streets, really narrow sidewalks, tiny little parks, you know, and what the heck am I supposed to do here? So, you know, the kinds of things that I had to take into consideration were, you know, your utilities under the ground, obviously the pavement. These are root constraints, and it also affects your water availability. So this is an image of the same plan that you saw before. There was a small urban park on one side and lots of pavement, and hidden in that aerial view were two little trees over here. So this is downtown Elmsford. And I did this park in 2010, and I did the street tree planting here as well in 2010. And, you know, look at this difference. Here's this beautiful giant canopy of a tree over here, planted basically at the same time to these over here. So, you know, there is a relationship between the root space and the canopy of the tree. I will say that, you know, sometimes I am my own worst enemy, and you can see here in crafting the redesign of this park, I did have to build a giant trench right next to these trees. Happily, even after 14 years, they're still doing okay. So, you know, we have challenges to deal with. And again, just as George said, those partners that we're going to work with are going to be what make sure that we have success. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So I want to just say that as George talked about some of these issues of what size, you know, you're looking at in terms of tree pits. So I'm going to give you some of my best practices that I use. You know, this is downtown Mamaroneck. We built this in maybe 2003. This picture on the left is of the trees that we planted here. And then you can see those same trees in 2024. So they do grow, but they're going to be restricted because of the utilities and the pavement, the compaction of people's feet. These all contribute to the health of the tree. So, you know, what I could afford at the time with this project was a 4x6 tree pit. That is my absolute minimum that I will go for. And that's not only just because I feel that, you know, I won't get a good canopy, but also because literally the root ball won't fit in something smaller than that. Here's an example of how I kind of tried to look at this, where I expanded the opportunities for those trees to live. So this is in Mount Vernon. We did this in 2008. The picture shown here is from 2024. And this little oval is going to kind of, this oval plan is going to kind of define the types of tree plantings we did here. So on the left-hand side of the slide, also shown down here at the bottom of the oval, these trees are planted on a slope. There's lots of room for the roots to grow. And so we have a pretty nice canopy. In the middle, we have a little bit less room, more restriction. We're still getting pretty good canopy here. And then over on the far side, we still do have some canopy, even though they are planted in the smaller tree pits. So, you know, when I look at the aspect of it, I always try to find as many different opportunities for the trees to grow. So here is a very restricted area that we had to do some planting in, Warburton Avenue in Hastings. The sidewalk is about 9 feet wide. There are basements underneath. There are, I can't even tell you how many utilities. And so we had to try to come up with something that would allow people to still move down the sidewalk, but allow the tree to grow. So this is kind of a, you know, very restricted area, and this is what I tried to do. So we made a tree pit, shown in this upper photograph, and we put a frame around the concrete, and then we placed this grate on top. Now, this isn't, you know, the most attractive looking grate, but the intention here was that this grating material is going to protect those roots. Also, obviously, allow water through, but people are not going to compact this with their foot traffic. And then on top of that grate, we put pavers in, and that's really so that people can maximize the use of the very narrow sidewalks, get a tree in there, but allow the tree to have some root space. So I just want to kind of talk about this concept of kind of spreading the dollar around in terms of your tree plantings. And I think this is really, really important to kind of keep in mind. So we tend to want to spend all our money in the planting phase, but really, in reality, and this is from a meta-analysis Beyond the Golden Shovel, that is in the Journal of American Planting Association from May of 2024, last year, we really need to spread that dollar around. And so again, just kind of keeping in line with what George said before, you know, pre-planting, we need to have municipal policies in place, and we need a finance strategy to make sure that our plants are going to be successful. We need an experienced team during the planting phase. We need a good contractor, designer, and a nursery to supply us with those plants. And post-planting, the monitoring, you know, I would say 3 to 5 years would be excellent. Normally I only get like my 1-year plant guarantee from the nursery, but I would say we really need to think a little bit more proactively in this. And that would include that watering element and any kind of stewardship we can have. You know, I want to provide you with some facts, go back one, on this issue, just so you're aware. And this is the reason why I'm trying to emphasize this triad of finance. 30% of the trees in our urban landscape die within 5 years, and about 50% within 15 years. And these are facts that are from the study I cited below. And it takes about a 30-year survivability, as George alluded to offset the carbon emissions of planting. So that's, you know, getting that plant into place, the growth that it did in the nursery, and all of those carbon infrastructure that's required to grow that plant. And right now, 70% of our funds are used for purchase and installation, and only 10% for maintenance. So just some other strategies, and to George's point, you know, I think trees are the best way, but just in case you have some little spots that can't fit the trees, here's some other ideas. So we did a rain garden down in Peekskill, and I have to say that there is stewardship here. You know, the local businesses have started to do some plantings in there on a regular basis for renewal, and so that's been great. I also did another one in Pleasantville. You know, the first year I was terrified. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen here. But you can see even in this photograph in 2021, you know, it's being maintained. People are looking at this and making sure that it's in good holistic condition. And these also provide for, you know, biodiversity as well as stormwater benefits. Just to let you know what we're going to be doing in the future. This is a streetscape I'll be doing in front of the Mamaroneck Avenue School in the village of Mamaroneck. And, you know, again, I'm looking to do some different strategies with placing trees in areas as large as I can get to provide for that larger canopy. You know, the civic engagement process is going to be very important here. And where I can, I will incorporate rain gardens. All of these factors are very important when we're thinking about the urban landscape. And I would always say to you, at the end of the day, you know, we all have a role that we can play here, whether it's volunteer on our local municipal boards. But we also have to keep in mind that we should look at that borrowed landscape, and maybe an approach also to think about is to preserve those trees. George also alluded to that. You know, we have a borrowed landscape that we can use here. Homeowners can preserve the trees on their property, and certainly anything that we can do in terms of municipal strategies and making sure that when trees are removed that they are replaced is going to be helpful to us. Thank you so much for your time.
Suzette, thank you so
that's the way
much.
to go. Smart.
Wonderful tour of Westchester and all the good work that you've been doing. So now we'll take a look at a current example of a streetscaping project that is underway. Landscape architect Laura Starr will walk us through New Rochelle's Lincoln Neighborhood Corridor project. Laura, the mic is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are you looking at my screen at an image of New Rochelle, this traffic circle?
Yes.
Screen shared? Okay, that's great. Well, it's great to follow Suzette because clearly Suzette is doing heroic work, trying to make every square inch of space work for the benefit of trees. Okay, why is she having to do that? Because, and I'm going to say this boldly, you know, we're talking about the spaces that are left over on the streets for the trees, but I'm going to put out there, what if you reduce the amount of roadway? What if you trade out some of the street space to make more green? And imagine what could happen for the trees and for cooling neighborhoods, for biodiversity, for walkable cities. So that is what the Link project is about. This is in New Rochelle. For those of you who, just to orient you, the train station is down here. This is I-95. And our project involves removing this spur on off-ramp to I-95 and this fast-moving north-south Memorial Highway that was built in the middle of this neighborhood that was a vibrant and economically healthy Black neighborhood. And it basically it ruined, you know, the generational economic health of this community. And the city of New Rochelle, they have phenomenal leadership, and they're very courageous, and they're great at getting grant money. And they got money to take this road system out to put back 9 acres of green. And as landscape architects, we're really in the business of making every square inch of outdoor space what I call high performing. In other words, how can the space absorb water? How can it create a healthy environment for people's physical health, for our mental health? How does it support biodiversity? And how does green space support, well-designed green space, support local economies and create economic benefits for the community? So you can see here all the co-benefits we're talking about with this project of making a safe and vibrant environment, of reconnecting the neighborhood that was severed by that Memorial Highway, making a great green space for the enjoyment of people of all ages, reconnecting downtown to the neighborhoods to the north, including making a way for kids to ride from the center of New Rochelle all the way up to their high school, which is north off this map. And of course, driving economic development. So here's our circle that I showed in the first slide and the roadway. So that roadway was like 6 lanes wide, and now we're making it 2 lanes wide. And imagine when you take out however much like, I don't know, 30, 40 feet of pavement to create 40 feet of green. As well as a wider sidewalk and bikeway, like all those benefits you get. And then here is where we're putting in a new park, that will, I'll show you that in a second. And then this is also sitting on top of a major stormwater project, which I will also show you. As for the cars coming off of the highway will still go down. They'll go down the on-ramp instead of over that bridge, and they'll make a right to turn north up North Avenue. And then there will be no entrance onto Memorial Highway from this particular location in this part of town. So here's our traffic circle. And look at this project, how much green we're going to get. Like, look at all these trees. I hope I have the spacing right. I'm learning a lot from this. I'm learning a lot from this program today. And, you know, New Rochelle will certainly have the challenge of raising the maintenance funds for this project. They're going to try to have some green jobs programs. Another aspect of this is as this project spurs economic development, we're talking to the developers about trying to start some kind of a park conservancy or a business improvement district that will have a revenue stream to help fund the maintenance of the park. So these, you know, these projects have a certain synergy to them if they're managed well and consistently. This soccer field is sitting on top of storage for 750,000 gallons of water. That this area sits in the low point of a neighborhood. Like if you get off the train and you go to Montefiore Hospital and look north, you'll see how the landscape just slopes down right to our project site. So the stormwater capture is a huge component of this. So this is the park I was telling you about. Remember, this was a huge fast-moving highway. And now what we're getting that soccer field on top of the stormwater capture area. We're getting a dog run with lots of trees around it. Adult fitness, including physical therapy equipment for older adults. A water spray feature, a children's playground built into the hill. We're preserving some of the soil that was underlaying that elevated highway, so we don't have to truck so much of it off. And also we're trying to capture some of the other hilly and rugged topography that is really great in the other areas of New Rochelle, north and south of here. The project includes an amphitheater and then a connection to points east. The programming for the park came out of hours and hours and hours, and 2 years of community engagement. So I will say that to do an urban scale project like this, it takes a great mayor, a great team of a development office, a planning office, an infrastructure office under the mayor, and a lot of conversations with all sectors of the community, and to really get those ideas and hear what people are concerned about, and really integrate that into the design. When I talked about the economic development, these are going to be new townhouses along here, right edging the park. We're going to update this rendering, but you can see how, remember, this is now a highway, but now there will be this line of buildings here with cafes on the ground floor and maybe some children's activities, probably the comfort station, the bathrooms, and maybe a park office serving the park. So, the idea is lots of trees, lots of stormwater capture, places for the community to come and exercise and socialize, eat, come to events, cool off. This is the highway overpass across North Avenue that's coming down, and it's going to make way for this new amphitheater built into that hill with the play areas on top. And then I talked about the widening, the narrowing of memorial, the north-south memorial. So we're taking, in the picture on the upper left, we're taking out a lane and a half of those cars. Actually, it's 2.5 lanes of those cars, and moving the curb way over to create an entrance that may come in across a bioswale. You can see the bikeway along the street, two-way bikeway. And then closer to Memorial Hospital, which is in the picture on the far left. You can see again, we're narrowing the road here to make way for lots of street trees, bikeway, a pedestrian path. And keep in mind, another reason these bikeways are important is, and I really encourage other towns to do this, is it's not just bicycles now, it's e-scooters, it's e-bikes. Like, people really are starting to move around cities in a completely, different way that requires maybe a different type of mobility system that might trade out some of the space needed for cars to make room for trees and this other form of two-wheeled movement. Okay, I mentioned the stormwater project. And again, the idea of how many different benefits can a single move make. The slide on the left is a project Starr Whitehouse, my company, did at the Battery Conservancy. This is a bioswale in the middle of a playground that's like, I don't know, 3 minutes from the South Ferry Station, a very popular location. And actually, when we've done community engagement in New Rochelle and we have people put stickers on their favorite images, this is everybody's favorite image, it seems. And I think people like it because 1, it's beautiful, 2, it's helping to mitigate flooding, and 3, it's providing a nature trail, stepping stone, walkway for the kids to the right of it, and also a beautiful place for adults to look at. So it's providing all those benefits. And we're going to have a string of these in the link. To the right is an example of putting, porous pavement under bikeways. There's also these street trees would have special soil, structural soil that can go under impervious surfaces, under paving, to keep room in the root zone for the trees to get the water that they need and prevent compaction. So that's also a very important thing to do, especially if you're doing street trees in a constricted sidewalk or plaza space. And then the subsurface storage under the playing field. This is showing the overall green system and the blue, actually the blue system where the stormwater is going, the sewer conveyance with the dotted lines, and then the big stormwater capture area under the soccer field, and basically where all the water is going, and then the different ways that we're capturing the water, storing it underground in the soccer field, creating rain gardens that will also have trees in them, and green streets. So in some cases, this, not in this picture, but in many cases, this might involve removing a parking space or 2. And I would recommend starting to do this. We're doing it in New York, and people go a little nuts at first, but then they really embrace it because it's cooling the city. Well, it's providing all the benefits you've heard about. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said. And then the bioswales. So thank you for listening to this. If you have questions, you can go to the project website on the New Rochelle website. And also we have a user survey. If you want to take a picture of this QR code, you can take our survey. So I'm going to hand it back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Laura, for sharing this ambitious and comprehensive project and giving us an example of what is possible when the community decides to take action. So next, Oded Holzinger from Groundwork Hudson Valley is going to answer the question, what can we do when it's not possible or practical to plant trees? He'll be describing their innovative work in Yonkers. Oded, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Federated Conservationists of Westchester County for hosting this really wonderful webinar, and to the speakers prior to me. So We just learned from Laura that one thing you can do when when there's not enough space for trees is make space for trees, which I think is really important, but we can't always do that everywhere. So another thing we can do to try and address the issue of extreme heat is use artificial shade structures. And today I'm going to speak with you about a new initiative, just kicked it off this month, a partnership between Groundwork Hudson Valley and the Hudson River Museum, funded by Con Edison, called Throwing Shade on Extreme Heat, a community-based shade structures envisioning initiative in Yonkers, New York. My name is Oded Holzinger. I'm the executive director of Groundwork Hudson Valley. And I am aware of the short time we have left, so I'm going to try and run through some of the past work we've done and get to what's coming next. So many of you know Groundwork very well. I'm not going to get into the details here, but I will say that this initiative is going to include our 3 different departments. Our sustainability education department, we're going to educate young people about shade structures and how they're being used in different urban streetscapes. Our green jobs department will build demonstration projects. And our community adaptation department is going to lead much of the work around organizing community members to envision the integration of shade structures in their communities. We started organizing communities in Yonkers to think and advocate for extreme heat mitigation back in 2019 through a NOAA funded project in partnership with Kappa Strategies, where we had community members put these heat sensors on their cars, and we mapped the whole city and drove through. Community members drove through it and did an on-the-ground feels-like heat mapping. And that kicked off an initiative called Climate Safe Yonkers, where we started organizing community members in different neighborhoods to address climate vulnerabilities and specifically extreme heat in their neighborhood. As part of that, we conducted a heat vulnerability assessment, taking into account factors like impervious surfaces, tree canopy coverage, median surface temperature, as well as socioeconomic factors, to rank local neighborhoods by their vulnerability to heat and develop the local heat vulnerability index. Of course, we talked about this today, and the main impact that we feel, aside from some of the health impacts that Anjali touched on, we don't need much science and graphs to know how heat waves are impacting our daily lives. And in the survey, some of you said that you stay at home due to all of these heat waves. Well, our focus is on specifically the communities that don't always have the ability to stay at home. If it's outdoor workers, if it's parents with children who want to go out to the playground, if it's school kids having to go back, walk back from school, or people that need to stand at a bus stop to get to work. And we can see that heat waves is a phenomenon that's becoming more frequent, lasting longer, is more intense, and the season, as we all know, begins earlier and ends later. We also looked at redlining, and I won't get into the practice of redlining, but we looked at redlining as part of our analysis, and the reason is to show that, you know, while it's gonna take maybe a long time for us to really mitigate the human contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, when it comes to the differences between the vulnerabilities to those impacts between different neighborhoods in the same city, we can see that there's real differences. And the fact that we bring in redlining is there to show that the urban design has to do with it. Where we have more green space, we'll see less impacts of heat, extreme heat. Where we have more impervious surface, these neighborhoods will suffer more, sometimes up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit more during a heat wave. So following that, we organized the Climate Safe Yonkers Task Force, a group of 30 community members from the city's most climate vulnerable neighborhoods. They met for 18 months. They met monthly. They got stipends as part of this process because they are professional community members and their input is valuable input. And so compensation is critical here. And they also participated, you can see here on the lower left side, a partnership with We Act, an organization in Manhattan that led us through a heat walk in Harlem. That later on they came for a similar walk in Yonkers. And we did a lot of outreach to the local community with our task force members. But most importantly, we got a great opportunity also in partnership with Starr Whitehouse and Borough Happold, another New York-based urban planning firm, to develop the climate action plan for the city of Yonkers. And the task force played a key role in shaping the Yonkers climate action plan, specifically around developing and reviewing climate action strategies and adding to each strategy an equity review and recommendation for how can the recommendations have an equity focus in them. So following that, we, last thing here in the analysis, we also partnered with NASA Develop program to show how hyper-local design can have an impact. So here you can see in the neighborhood of Nodine Hill in Yonkers, modeling tree planting on the sidewalks can show a huge difference in the temperature that's felt, and much of that is thanks to the shade that those trees provide. Now, staying in Nodine Hill, Nodine Hill presents somewhat of an urban irony. You can see the street names: Chestnut, Elm, Oak, Maple, Linden, and this is what the streetscape of these streets look like. So this is a very dense neighborhood with utility lines, with a lot of urban utilities, also underground with narrow sidewalks, with a lot of pedestrian activities, not many trees, not much space to plant trees, and also we don't have here the 6 lanes that we can take away from cars. So really not a lot of feasibility to do a lot of tree planting at the most vulnerable neighborhood for extreme heat. So after the Climate Action Plan was released in 2023, we switched gears and moved from planning to implementation, and we started organizing working groups, and that's what triggered this initiative. So looking at 50+ shades of shade structure, you can see that shade structures are today an innovative solutions that cities take to address extreme heat, and in areas where tree planting is less feasible, and there's many different ways to do that. You can see here an image from New Orleans in the 1930s, the use of awnings, and we know that there are different cities that that develop incentive programs for business owners to put out awnings and make sure that commercial streets can remain vital also during extreme heat waves. And then, of course, integrating the arts, like the umbrellas that many of you probably seen, using commercial spaces and covering them with canopies, playgrounds, bus stops, again, locations that people can't avoid even during heat waves. So again, the partnership, Groundwork Hudson Valley and the Hudson River Museum partnered together through Con Edison's Climate Justice Resilience funding program, a really terrific funding program that was announced. The awardees were announced in last December. 7 awardees from New York City and Westchester County doing really, really incredible projects. So as I mentioned, we kicked off the initiative just earlier this month, and exactly a week from now is when we're gonna hold, we've done a lot of recruitment for the working groups. We're developing 3 working groups for 3 different neighborhoods. Their kickoff meeting is gonna happen next Friday at the Hudson River Museum. So during the winter, there was a lot of project planning. We found contracted with an urban design consultant that will work with the working groups. And what we're going to do in the coming months is work with these working groups to map their neighborhoods and identify those high priority hotspots where people have to be, no matter what temperature it is, and be exposed to the extreme sun. And develop their ideas with the support of the landscape design consultant, develop their vision for shade structures that would help in mitigating the impacts of extreme heat, but that would also be beautiful and reflect the culture and the nature of their community. In the summer, we're going to work on producing an exhibit in the Hudson River that will kick off on September 19th. You will all hear about it, don't worry, but you can already put it in your calendar. September 19th, it's also a Friday. We're kicking off an exhibit at the Hudson River Museum Community Room. As part of that, we're also going to be coordinating with municipal partners. And then in the next 2 years, in 2026, we're going to develop a traveling exhibit and an educational curriculum that will be taught in Yonkers public schools, focused on shade structures, and take the traveling exhibit into communities, both in Yonkers, but also regionally, to, again, advocate for the integration of shade structures in the urban streetscape. In the 3rd year of the project, in 2027, our workforce programs are going to be partnering with local municipal and private partners to develop some demonstration projects so that we have something tangible to showcase. Here you can see we just wrapped up, as I mentioned, the shade structure working groups recruitment. We have 3 working groups of 11 members at each group. Each group has a group leader representing the group. They represent 3 different neighborhoods, and they're going to be meeting in the coming month on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. Of course, they're also compensated. And this is going to be a really rushed process because we really wanted to do the design and the mapping project while it's starting to get hot out, but also to kick off the exhibit while it is still hot out, and you need a couple of months of production in between. So it's going to be a busy season for us. Last thing, one of the recommendations in the climate action plan specifically talked about looking into utilizing the many parking lots in the city of Yonkers to allow for additional shade and for generating solar energy. Many of you probably know on the bottom left from the new shade solar canopy from the Croton Hudson train station. In New York City, we see those being built. New York City City Council is actually now promoting legislation to mandate the city to put shade solar canopies over their city-owned parking lots. So we'll be working with our municipal partners in the city of Yonkers to also map the potential of solar energy generation through parking lots, private, and we'll look at it by private versus public parking lots. And develop some ideas for where that and conceptual designs for solar canopies over parking lots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oded. That was an excellent and very informative presentation. All of them were, and we'd like to thank you all for presenting. In the program, on the agenda, we have Q&As right now scheduled, and then we have Leo closing with resources and funding opportunities available. We're going to switch that. I'm going to invite everybody to put any questions into the chat, and we will do our best to get to them even after the program, and connect you with answers. But Leo, if it's possible for you to pull up your slide to just explain some of these resources, I think that would be very valuable at this time.
Sure, and I hope you can hear me. My internet is really getting super spotty, so I leave my camera off. And I'll do this really quickly. I'll first of all put links into the chat. That's the best way to engage with those resources. And then I do have the slides to come with them. Boop. Can you see them?
Yes.
Awesome. So this first resource, and this is are just some very quick highlights, and I'm sure there's others that others have to share too. But the DEC's Division of Lands and Forests, and specifically the Urban Community Forestry Program, has a ton of resources. The link is amongst those that I put in the chat. This leads to the DEC's website. These on the screen are examples for state funding sources. There's a ton of other things too, from all sorts of different resources and sources. So I encourage you scrolling through this as a number one stop. The other resource I want to highlight is the Climate Smart Communities program. That's both a certification program to award communities that lead on a lot of climate work, mitigation, resilience, including the work that we described here. It's a municipal grant program, so local governments, county, and towns, villages, cities. It does support this kind of work that we talked about here too, including through the Climate Smart Communities Grants Program. But importantly, we also offer technical assistance through what's called the Climate Smart Community Coordinators. And you find that info, including those regional coordinators that are in the communities, in the chat as well. I think there was also one of our colleagues that are the local foresters there, another, and probably for this kind of work, equally as, if not for tree health and tree planting, more experienced resource also. So definitely reach out to that too. All of this for this first two links. And then finally, the third resource, if my slides advance, is the Environmental Bond Act that voters passed and makes resources available to fund work, including this kind of work. I'm sure by now you have heard about it, but you can also explore it online. But most importantly, for this purpose, I'm going to point to the funding finder, which is on the link down here, as well as in what I posted in the chat, where you can search for a host of grant opportunities that are currently active as well. With that, that's from me. I really appreciate your time. I sadly have to jump off, but my email is in the chat and I'm going to post it again. So you can connect with me for heat action plan questions as well. And I apologize that I have to jump now to another meeting. But I really appreciate this opportunity and this awesome meeting and workshop. And I hope I can stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Leo. We appreciate it. Thank you to all of the presenters again, and Jane and Carol, the organizers, for this workshop. I'm sorry we need to cut off the Q&A, but again, please send them to Jane, to the FCWC contact email. And if you have any pressing questions, we will connect you to the answers. Thank you.